Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Liz Moody Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about something that I honestly never thought I would be talking about on this podcast, my weight loss journey. As somebody who has struggled with disordered eating in the past, I'm going to be very sensitive with this conversation, and we are absolutely talking about weight loss in a healthy way. This is not a skinny talk situation, but if this episode is not for you, I totally get that, and I will see you on Wednesday. In this episode, I'm going to share what inspired my weight loss journey and all the little tactics and tricks that have worked for me. If you want a full episode on the science of weight loss, we have that too. I interviewed Nikki Parlitsis, the registered dietitian that I worked with, on an episode called How to Lose Weight in a Healthy Way that I can link in the comments. That has broader stroke information like if calories matter and if we have a weight set point and that kind of stuff. And today is going to be more like very specific tactical things that I did that helped me on my journey. So first of all, why did I even go on this journey? It started last summer when I did this full blood panel. I got the results back and I sent them to my friend, Michelle Shapiro, who is an RD. She's also a former podcast guest. And she was like, okay, here's the deal. She was very nice about this, but she was like, okay, here's the deal. Basically, I was showing early signs of a slide into metabolic disease. My LDL was high, as was my apolipoprotein B. My fasting glucose was high. My HbA1c was borderline high, which was indicating that I was moving in the direction of prediabetes. So that was already like this wake-up call, this warning sign, this thing that I was grappling with. And then shortly after that, I did a speaking gig at Canyon Ranch, which is this really unique health resort in Tucson. I flew out to give a talk, and they invited me to try a number of their treatments, which includes both like traditional spa stuff, massages, facials, things like that, but also much more health-oriented stuff like blood tests and consults with exercise scientists and RDs and doctors. Zach and I both got DEXA scans, which measures your body fat, your visceral fat, and your bone density. And we did VO2 max tests, which look absolutely crazy. The footage of me doing this is so funny. Basically, you strap this mask to your face, and then you run on a treadmill to measure your body's ability to utilize oxygen during exercise. VO2 max is really interesting because up until recently, it's been viewed as really something that's more for athletes. Like if you're an extreme fitness person, you worry about your VO2 max. But now more and more science is pointing to it being one of the best predictors of longevity. And the DEXA scan showed that I was very much carrying extra fat on my body, and my VO2 max was much lower than it should have been, ideally, optimally, for someone my age. And basically, the sum of the whole picture of the blood test, of the DEXA scan, of the VO2 max test was that my weight was impacting my health, and particularly my weight was impacting my heart health. All four of my grandparents died of something related to heart disease, and heart disease is the leading cause of death in the United States. It is actually wild that we talk about heart health so little and we spend so much time talking about all these other elements of wellness when heart disease is the number one thing that is likely to kill us all. It should be a much, much higher priority. I don't know if I felt this at the time, but retrospectively, I can look back on these moments and realize that I did not feel good in my body anymore. Hikes particularly were feeling harder than they used to because I essentially had this weighted vest of my own body weight strapped to me at all times. So of course that made going up hills more difficult and less fun. One of my life mottos is that my body is for living, not looking, and living in my body was feeling less enjoyable than it used to. I think this happened during the pandemic. It's hard to pinpoint a time for this, but I started moving a lot less and I started stress eating a lot more, which I will get into more later. So that was my why. Now let's get into some of the mistakes that I was making and the changes that I made that made a difference. I came back from Canyon Ranch. I mean, this was a very complicated time in my life. It's also when Bella, my cat, died and we were freezing our embryos. There's a lot going on at this time. But in January, I reached out to Nikki, who's an RD that specializes in weight loss. She is from Michelle's practice, because I wanted to work with a professional on this for two main reasons. The first is I just really value and trust science and the expertise of professionals in their field. I really wanted to do this in a healthy way, in the right way, and I wanted to get as much guidance as I could in that direction. And the second reason is what I was honestly kind of embarrassed about, which is I thought I knew my shit. I wrote 2 healthy cookbooks, for God's sake. I interview experts on this podcast every single week. I have helped thousands of people change their lives and achieve their goals. A huge pressure that I feel in this job is to practice what I preach. And at first, this whole experience made me feel like a fraud and like a failure. Like, who was I to host this podcast, to write these books, if this was my lived experience with my own health? And then I realized it makes me better to do all of these things because I am human. I am a real human living in the real world, dealing with real challenges, and that gives me so much valuable information to help you even better. Okay, so let's get into that helping. Here are the things that have helped the most in my own journey in no particular order. First of all, I was sort of willfully misinterpreting what whole foods were. I had this idea that you can't overeat if you eat whole foods, which is completely untrue. As Nikki said in our episode together, there are so many things that are messing with our hunger and satiety signals regularly, like stress and eating on the go or eating in front of the TV. And I also was grouping chocolate chip cookies from the farmer's market in the same whole food category as carrots and broccoli. I had this idea that as long as something was made with high quality ingredients, like good sourdough, your body would naturally regulate your hunger around it. And if you are truly eating like completely whole foods, maybe that is true. But much of what I was eating was bread and pasta and flours. And even if they were quote unquote good ingredients, they are so easy to overeat. I was casually taking in extra thousands of calories on a very regular basis and thinking because the foods were high quality, because they weren't ultra processed foods, they weren't like Doritos in a bag, they weren't what I thought of as junk food, my body would self-regulate its hunger. I want to talk about calories for a second because I was so adverse to counting calories. And I never ended up doing like a MyFitnessPal thing, but getting a general idea of how many calories things have and realizing how skewed my own perception had been was really big for me. Like nuts. I would willy-nilly add nuts to everything or eat massive spoonfuls of peanut butter with apples and think that I was having a healthy snack. I had this idea that for nutritious food, more was more. Like if I made a smoothie in the morning, I would keep drinking it even if I was full because everything in it was good for me and I didn't want it to go to waste. And realizing that you can even overeat nutritious foods, especially if you're over-indexing on the nuts, the sourdoughs, the grass-fed cheeses, the avocados, etc., versus the vegetables. You pretty much cannot overeat cauliflower. You will get way too full. You'll probably get really farty. Your body just will not let you do that. But sourdough bread with grass-fed butter, a chocolate smoothie filled with avocado, very easy to overeat. As Nikki said in our episode together, we can really quickly house like 50 almonds in the form of nut butter that we make a brownie with. And it is a lot, even if it's nutrient dense. There has never been a time in history before when it is so easy to consume huge amounts of calories, even from foods that we think of as nutritious, healthy foods. So a big shift was developing more of a general awareness about calories and portion sizes, which again, I really avoided for years because of the messaging of the wellness world and because I didn't want to slip into diet culture. I think those conversations are so important and they messed up my thinking around food in a different way. So now I still add nuts to my salad, but I'm not like heaping them on. I don't have many nut butters because that's just so many calories condensed into one little tiny bite. If I am really going to enjoy it, sure, but I'm not just going to blindly be eating it because it's healthy. This is another big shift. I ask myself why I'm eating. If I'm eating for pleasure, I really enjoy the food. I savor it. I don't watch TV while I'm eating it. And if I order something out that's for pleasure, like I'm at a coffee shop and I get a matcha and that matcha doesn't really hit, I will not drink it. If I take a bite of cake for dessert at a restaurant and I don't love it, I do not have another bite. I have a huge sweet tooth, and before I would kind of mindlessly eat whatever sweets were in front of me. And now I'm like, if this is for pleasure, it better be pleasurable or I am not gonna do it. And on the other side, if I'm eating for fuel, I've kind of taken some of the pressure off. I used to want every single bite that I put in my mouth to be the best thing ever. And I'd make these meals with a capital M, like all of these ingredients, all restaurant quality. And I'm still not a fan at all of suffering through meals because healthy food can and should taste delicious. But I do not need to make a pasta dish with like 25 ingredients. I have been making my meals for fuel much, much simpler, which is both easier to prepare, a key thing. And I've also honestly been finding that simplicity really, really enjoyable. Again, it's just like taking the pressure off. My absolute hyperfixation meal recently, for instance, is I roast Japanese sweet potatoes at 400 degrees until they are really squishy and caramelized, like for an hour, a really long time. And then in a pan, I saute grass-fed ground beef with a generous amount of salt until it's brown. And then I add a lot of garlic powder, onion powder, coconut aminos, red pepper flakes, and then a ton of chopped green onions. And I saute that for a few minutes. And I cut the sweet potatoes up into big cubes and I top it with the beef. It is so good. It hits so hard. It gives me fuel, but it's not like a 10-step recipe with all these ingredients. I just gave you the entire recipe. I said the whole thing right there. And if something is meant to be fuel, I really look for it to fuel me. Does it have protein? Does it have fiber? Is it blood sugar friendly? Another trick that I learned from Nikki around this fuel versus pleasure thing that I have found immensely helpful is that most of the time when we are eating out, it is for pleasure, but the food that you eat out isn't often that fueling. So I eat a small fuel meal before I go out. Like I will defrost a small portion of one of those beef and sweet potato stir fries that I just mentioned, or a small portion of like a dense bean salad, or I'll eat some carrots with some hummus. And I fuel first. So at the restaurant, I can eat for a bit of fuel, but mostly for pleasure. And I'm not ravenous, so I'm eating less of the pleasure food. So I will enjoy the pizza, but I'm not starving. So I won't have like 5 slices. I'll have 1 or 2 slices. And again, if it's for pleasure, I am savoring the shit out of those slices. And you might have noticed that we have already started to highlight something that was absolutely key to my journey, which is planning ahead. I truly think this is the weight loss secret that not enough people are talking about. It is when you are hungry and you do not have options that you make the worst choices. For me, planning ahead means having ready prep meals in my fridge and freezer as much of the time, at all times, if I can possibly have it at all times. It means looking at my day ahead of time. How long am I going to be out for? Do I need to bring a snack or a lunch? If I have a dinner out, do I have a healthy snack on hand to eat beforehand, or do I need to prep something? When am I going to fit my movement in? Truly looking at my day and my week and mapping it all out, like, okay, I'll have time to cook on this day. I have this food on hand for this day, has been an absolute game changer. If I am going to be out all day, I will bring a Koya protein shake or an IQ bar. IQ bars are shelf stable, which is handy, and they are delicious. And the Koya protein shakes are a more recent discovery, but both Nikki and Michelle approved of their ingredients. They have a ton of fiber and a ton of protein. And I have found these in Walgreens and CVS's all over. So if you are out and about and in a pinch, they are a really great healthy option to look for. I also got this lunch bag called a packet. I can link it in the show notes. You keep it in the freezer and it has ice packs built into it. So if I'm going to be out all day, I can grab one of my meal prepped lunches and I can bring it with me and it stays food safe and good to go. And then I have that ready on hand when I need it. Okay, next. Very early on, I said to Nikki, hey, I want to add in things. I do not want to count calories. I do not want to feel deprived. And she said, cool, you can add in as many veggies as you want. So at every single meal, I am adding in roasted broccoli. I am snacking on some carrots. And again, I am not precious about this. I'm not making fancy meals. I'm not even trying to incorporate these components into my meals. I'm just roasting a whole head of broccoli, a whole head of cabbage, and I'm eating that on the side of whatever I am eating, even if it doesn't go together. I don't eat like the entire cabbage or the entire broccoli, but I roast it all together and then I have it ready in the fridge. That would be insane. That'd be a very farty situation. Nikki also had me add in something called sun fiber, which I take once or twice a day before meals. I will link that in the show notes too. It just dissolves in water. You cannot taste it and it adds in more fiber, and that is meant to help with my cholesterol situation. A huge change that I made, and this one will probably be the most shocking to anyone who has been here for a while, but I switched to savory breakfasts. I realized my green smoothies were packed with calories because of the nuts and the avocados, and they weren't really satiating me, and having something sweet first thing in the morning really set me up to crave sweet all day long. And then my blood sugar would spike and then it would dip. And then I'd have this pre-lunch jittery crash where I was starving. And I just really wasn't feeling good with the smoothies anymore. I have always designed my smoothies to be the absolute best version of a smoothie possible. They are so much better than any other recipes that I see, than anything that I see out, because they actually do have protein. They are lower in sugar. But I find I personally do much better having one later in the day, like an afternoon snack, or sometimes if I've eaten a lot during the day and I'm not that hungry at dinner, I'll even have one for dinner. So one of the biggest changes that I have made on this journey is I have said fuck it to the idea of breakfast food. Truly, who decided what qualified as breakfast food and why was that person obsessed with sugary carbs? I love a veggie scramble, but I cannot do that day after day after day. And I am not a morning person at all. So I really like to have my breakfast ready to go when I wake up. So now I just eat my meal prep for breakfast. I'll have like chicken veggie stir fry, or I'll have my sweet potato beef bowls, or I'll have dense bean salad. I want it to be savory and hearty and filling, and it has completely changed my energy levels throughout the day and my cravings. And sometimes if I want eggs, if I want like breakfast food, savory breakfast food, I'll have it for dinner. And if I want sweet breakfast food like pancakes or French toast or cereal, sometimes I'll have that for dessert because those are dessert foods. I'm crazy. I don't know. I'm throwing all caution to the wind here. I'm doing crazy things. I've also cut out stress eating. I asked Nikki early on if she could name one difference between the people that she has worked with in her practice who have successfully lost weight in a healthy way and those who did not. And she said that the people in the former group do not stress eat. And again, back to the fuel or pleasure notion. Stress eating does neither. And it was a big category of the food that I was consuming. So at the beginning of this process, I kept a note on my phone and I jotted down everything that I ate and how I was feeling when I ate it. Nikki calls it a food and mood journal. And it quickly became clear that a lot of my eating happened around 3 p.m. And it was just this grazing that was me avoiding work and feeling stressed and feeling tired. So I'd grab like a skinny dipped peanut butter cup and then I'd go back and I'd work for a little bit. And then I would make a piece of sourdough bread with grass-fed butter. And then I would go back and work for a little bit. And then maybe I'd make a little fun drink. And suddenly I have eaten hundreds of calories in extra little snacks and I haven't really enjoyed them or savored them. And guess what? They also haven't really made me less stressed. It felt actually impossible to not stress eat at the beginning of this journey because I'd be sitting there working and I would hyper fixate on like a cookie that I knew was in my freezer. But first of all, I just stopped keeping those snacks that I know I stress eat around. So I don't keep cookie dough in my freezer. I don't keep skinny dipped anything. There are almonds, there are peanut butter cups around. I don't keep cereal around. I am not depriving myself. I am an adult. I can go to the store and I can get these things if I am really desperate. But the number one rule of habits is to make the habits that you want easier and the habits that you do not want harder. And if the habit that I'm trying to break is stress eating, why am I making it so easy for myself by having the foods that I am trying not to eat ready at hand? So I've stopped keeping the foods that I like to stress eat around my house at all. And I'm trying to find better ways to deal with my stress in a root cause, like actually feeling better way. I am taking many, many more walks. I'm taking little midday reading breaks, which feels so indulgent and princess-like, but honestly, it makes me so much more productive afterwards. Yesterday, I watched an episode of Sex and the City in the middle of the day, which felt decadent as all get out. I will say, especially if you are prone to bedtime procrastination, i.e. scrolling at night because it's your only you time all day, sneaking in these little breaks throughout the day is such a good antidote. And now when I'm stressed, or even in general, I just don't crave foods in the same way as I used to. I've broken that chokehold they have on me. I've begun to mitigate my stress better. I feel so much better. It's something I never would have believed if you told past me that. But given enough time, it really does shift. So I will say, be patient with yourself, especially if you're somebody who craves little treats, little snacks, things like that. But it has changed so radically in me in ways that I would not have even begun to believe before. I do still tend to want dessert, but I save it for after dinner because then at least I'm not getting that glucose spike. And the main thing that I've been trying to do with dessert is to make it high fiber. So It's naturally more filling. And also, again, the fiber is going to help with that blood sugar spike. My go-to, my absolute favorite thing is raspberries with chocolate chips. I just stick a little chocolate chip in the raspberry hole, and it is so, so good. I think about it all day. I know I just said I stopped hyper fixating on things. I think about my raspberries a lot. I love them so much. And if I'm feeling snacky, like I'm watching a movie and I just want to sort of shovel food in my mouth, I'll do popcorn tossed with coconut aminos and sriracha. It is a little sweet, it's a little spicy, it's a little salty. It has a ton of fiber, and it is so, so good. In terms of movement, I have been trying to walk 10 to 15,000 steps a day, mostly so that I'm up and moving all day long, which has so many benefits outside of weight loss. There is not a magic number to go for here, but just trying to move all the time instead of being annoyed that I need to go grab something and like asking Zach to do it for me, being like, oh, it's an opportunity to move my body a little bit. This is wonderful. I've also started incorporating ReHIT, which we talked about on the episode with Dr. Shannon Ritchie from January, because it's incredibly good for heart health and VO2 max. It's basically 3 to 4 bursts of 30-second all-out effort with 2 to 3 minutes of recovery in between those bursts of effort. And I've also really prioritized weight training because I do not want my weight loss to be from muscle. I want it to be fat loss. I want to gain muscle, and strength training is the best way to do that. I have my full workout routine, including these specific exercises that I do in a Substack post that I will link in the show notes. But in general, I walk every day. I do a full body 30 to 40 minute weight training routine 4 times a week. And then twice a week, I do ReHIT, where I walk for a few minutes and then I either way up the incline or I burst into a run. And either way, I'm going all out effort. Like, I cannot do this for any longer than 30 seconds. I do that for 30 seconds and then I recover for a few minutes and then I repeat 3 or 4 times in the session. Okay, I know that was a lot, so let's do a little recap of all of the changes that I've been making. I stopped confusing high quality ingredients like really good sourdoughs, really good grass-fed butters with healthy foods that I can just eat as much of as I want on any given day. I became more aware of calories, not counting them obsessively, but just understanding how easy it is to overeat even nutritious foods. I started differentiating between eating for fuel and eating for pleasure and making both of those choices more intentional. I began planning ahead, which honestly might be the most underrated key to success. I cut out stress eating as much as I possibly could by tracking how my mood and my food were connected and making it harder to act on those stress cravings by not keeping the foods that I like to stress eat in my house. I leaned into savory, blood sugar-friendly meals, especially in the morning. I started making movement a daily priority. I got much more serious about my strength training and just my general workout routine, and I added in that ReHIT, again for my VO2 max, to take care of my heart health. But more than anything, I have learned that it is not about being perfect. It is about being real with yourself. It is about being compassionate. It is about being strategic. It's not about beating yourself up or making yourself smaller, making yourself take up less space. It's about valuing this body that we live our one life in and wanting it to feel as good as possible for as long as possible. You do not need to earn your worth with your weight. But if you want to, if part of your journey to feel better in your body and support your long-term health involves weight loss, you can do that in a way that is kind and empowering and rooted in science, not shame. For me, it has been so empowering to make these changes and to see and to feel a real difference in my body. It is less about numbers on the scale and more about self-efficacy and empowerment, which Nikki and I talked a lot about in our episode together. I feel so empowered in my body. I feel like I'm treating it so much better, and that is translating into the rest of my life. I'm going to have Nikki back on when I am back in New York in September, and we can answer any of your specific questions that you have left after listening to these 2 episodes. So make sure that you're following the podcast and stay tuned for that. I will also link Nikki's info and our episode together in the show notes. Also, I want to be super clear that this was not sponsored in any way. I literally paid Nikki to work with her, but I found her incredibly helpful. And I also don't want to pretend that any information that I got from her is coming from me. I want to properly attribute, which is why you've heard so much about her in this episode. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with somebody that you think might benefit from it. There is so much bullshit. There is so much harmful information about weight loss circulating the internet these days that I am especially passionate about sharing science-grounded, reasonable, doable, actionable advice. Also, sharing the podcast is the best way to support it. It is the best way to make sure that we can continue to make high-quality content for you, and it is so, so appreciated. We are able to bring you this show completely for free because of the brands that you heard sponsoring this episode. I'm so, so picky about the brands that I work with. I turn down 99% of them. I turn down a zillion supplement companies. I stand behind every single recommendation that I make here. You can save money on amazing products while supporting the show by using the discount codes that we share. There's a full list of all of our active ones at lizmoody.com/codes. You can also come hang out on Instagram. I'm at Liz Moody. I'll be sharing more of the food, the little simple recipes that I've been making. I'll just share more of the daily parts of this journey. It's going to be the same sort of reasonable, science-grounded approach to all of this that you've heard on this podcast, that you heard on the podcast with Nikki, and that I just take to content, to advice like this in general. Okay. I love you. I appreciate you taking this journey with me. I appreciate you spending your time with me in this way. And I will see you on the next episode of the Liz Moody Podcast. Oh, just one more thing. It's the legal language. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, a psychotherapist, or any other qualified professional.